Hey, this is the Fights Tonight podcast. This is Travis here with my co-host Lewis. Lewis, what's good?
Hey, what up, Travis? How you doing?
Pretty good, man. We didn't want to scare anybody with me and Lewis taking a couple weeks off, so we figured we'd come back and give a really short breakdown, especially since we got boxing going on with the MMA. Try to give you guys some more picks. We have still been betting in the meantime. If you guys are lucky, Lewis might post some of those. It's always the cards you don't expect to do well that you do.
They're
Uh,
definitely lucky, Travis. They're gonna get it.
Oh yeah. Well, hopefully we can get lucky again this week. That's the important part. Um, to start off, it's just a UFC fight night, but we do have some good fights, especially on the main card. Um, to start off, we've got a couple of fights in the lighter weight classes. We've got Nicholas Mata versus Cameron Van Camp. That's at 155. At 135, we've got Tony Gravely versus the undefeated Javid Basharat. Um, Women's flyweight, we've got Maria Agapova versus Jillian Robertson. None of those are we feeling too strongly picks wise. They've had some mix ups and a couple weight misses. I know Aspen Ladd so far has missed weight. I'm not sure if her fight is off or not. And then I know Alan Amidowski also missed weight. He's a really big underdog against Joseph Pfeiffer on the main card. Um, the first one I want to take a look at is this lightweight bout here between Trey Ogden and Daniel Zellhuber. Daniel is undefeated at 12-0, highly touted prospect out of Mexico. Kind of looks like Ryan Garcia. His nickname is the Golden Boy. Had a pretty impressive win. Went to the scorecards on the Contender Series, which is how he's gotten here. This will be his first fight in the UFC. Whereas Trey Ogden, he's lost a quarter of his fights. The only one I know of that he's had so far was against Jordan Levitt, who just lost that fight to Paddy the Baddy. And Jordan Levitt, who is good, but was able to beat him. I believe this is one of the biggest favorites on this card, at least until we get to the main card. So I would put this Daniel Zellhuber, the Golden Boys, his nickname. I would put him on a parlay. It won't be our main one, but definitely somebody to look at. Another favorite I think's got a good chance of pulling it out is Loma Lukbunmi. She goes up against Denise Gomez. Loma, for anybody that remembers, is a really good Muay Thai specialist. She's found a cool way to kind of use her trips and stay on top and kind of turn that into a bit of a ground game where your average kickboxer or boxer wouldn't have that at all. If you get somebody in Muay Thai that's good with the trips, like a Sanchai, it's something that could really help your ground game. Where even if maybe you're a little bit under on the level, if you can stay on top and start off landing some elbows and start off in a good spot, it can make things go a lot easier for you. They both only got 6 wins. Gomez does only have the 1 loss, whereas Loma's got 3. But Loma's definitely had a lot more experience. Came up against a lot better fighters. That women's 155 division is really good. So I see her getting this one done. She is a 2-1 favorite, but one to put on one of our longer parlays. Up next, we have another favorite in Trevin Giles. He's kind of been bouncing around from that 170 to 185 area. He's going up against Louis Koski, I believe the name is. This guy, I'm trying to remember his fight he had. He had one where he lost in the 3rd round by TKO, but looked pretty good in it. Giles should come away with this one, but it's not one I feel confident enough to really put anything on. Unlike the last fight on the prelims here, Pat Sabatini versus Damon Action Jackson. Damon Jackson, kind of a weird road at 21-4. He was in the UFC for a while in the mid-teens. I think he got his walking papers or had to step out for whatever reason in like 2016 and has been back in the UFC for a couple of years. That's really hard to do. A couple of the only guys I can think of that did that would be Nick Diaz. Robbie Lawler, who came back and got a belt, Brandon Moreno, who left the UFC, came back and got a belt. So, usually if you're good enough to like get your walking papers from the UFC and work all your way back up to be able to get back into it, usually a guy that's going to be pretty tough to deal with. Thing is the reason he's the underdog is because he's going up against Pat Sabatini, who got most of his experience on the regional circuit, like a lot of those guys up on the Upper East Coast do. Kind of like Calvin Kattar, where like when they come in the UFC, they've already got like 20 or 25 fights, and they seem like kind of really well-rounded veterans. So they're not coming in as green as some of these other guys coming off the Contender Series are. He's not the best for striking, but he's good. He comes forward and is always pressing the action and stuff. Really strong top game. Comes from one of those good jiu-jitsu schools they've got out that way. Pat Sabatini, definitely a guy I'm going to be putting on one of my bigger parlays. That will bring us to the main card. We're going to start off with Anthony Hernandez. Fluffy, I believe his nickname is, been in the UFC for a little while, against another guy that's been around, Marc-Andre Barriault. Hernandez is just a little bit better, I feel, got a little less wear and tear on him. I think he's also roughly around a 2-1 favorite. I don't see it being the prettiest fight. I'd see him perhaps getting a late stoppage, probably going to a decision. Then we've got, I believe, our lone heavyweight bout on the main card here versus Tanner Boser, been in the UFC a while, kind of had ups and downs, versus Rodrigo Nascimento. I was pretty impressed with him the last time that I saw him. You see a lot of heavyweights that are just kind of out of shape and don't look that great, whereas this guy actually looked pretty smooth and dangerous. He got a TKO at the beginning, the second or third round, I want to say. This one's pretty close, I think, just because of the experience that Boser has, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Rodrigo got it. Maybe a guy I'll put a little bit on as an underdog, but he's definitely got so much less experience that we shouldn't put that on our bigger parlay. Somebody that is going to be, though, for sure, is Joe Pfeiffer. He is about a negative 500 last time I checked, but his opponent, on top of everything else, just missed weight. The funny thing is Pfeiffer, or Pfeiffer, maybe. I keep wanting to think it's a PH for whatever reason. He's only had one fight on the Contender Series, but he looked really good in it. His nickname's like Body Bag or something like that. And you can definitely tell this is supposed to be like a feature fight where they're throwing him on the main card, a couple from the co-main event. I think he gets this done, especially with his opponent missing weight, not having the easiest time. I've heard some weird things with guys like being backstage that aren't the favorite in their fight, especially if you're going up against a champion or somebody really well liked by the crowd. That they kind of, things don't go well for you backstage. Your interviews are never at a good time. USADA's waking you up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
The nutritionist is having problems. Just weird stuff. Hopefully that's not the case. And Alan just kind of misjudged it a little bit. He didn't miss by much, but I think Body Bag gets it done. So we're going to throw him on our parlay. And before we get to these last three MMA fights, I'd like to apologize to everybody for my voice. If you can't tell, I'm a little stuffed up and stuff. The smoking for sure doesn't help. I've been feeling a little off all week, so hopefully.
Yeah, Iron Man Travis gets sick once in a while.
Yeah, once every 5 years, but I do feel it when it happens. That brings us up to another interesting one here at featherweight. We've got Andre Fili, longtime kind of perennial contender, I guess you would call him, at 145. Trains at Team Alpha Male, really good striker. Unfortunately, he's one of those guys that like he'll win 3 or 4 in a row, and then he'll come into Yair Rodriguez and get spin kicked. Or I think the last time he had a tough fight, they put him in against Bryce Mitchell, and he was kind of doing good in the feet, but just couldn't stop it from getting controlled on the ground. And Bill Algeo is going to be looking to do that for sure. He's got, I don't know, kind of a similar record. Definitely a lot less experience. Feely's got to be in the UFC for like 10 years at this point or something. But Algio's going to be tough. This fight is really even just because, for as good as he is, Feely does tend to have mixed results. And Algio is on a bit of a win streak, but, has had his rough patches too. One I would stay away from, but probably going to be one of the more entertaining fights. That brings us to the co-main event, which might be one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most. This is Chidi Njokuani versus Gregory Rodriguez. Chidi Njokuani, part of the reason I like him is that his brother was also in the UFC a long time ago. Anthony Njokuani fought Cowboy, fought a bunch of those kind of dudes, came from the WEC, and came over with that group of guys that was at lightweight. Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Ben Henderson, all those guys. And I was always one of the better kickboxers. He stayed in for a while. I remember him having a good fight with Edson Barbosa and a few other guys. But it just seemed like it kind of came maybe too late in his career. He's been having some rough kickboxing matches out in Asia, as you do towards the end of your run. But his brother kind of did the opposite. Instead of jumping into MMA really quick, Chidi Njokuani stayed in kickboxing, stayed in glory, been doing really good. He came over a while ago. He's got almost 30 fights, so he's had plenty of MMA fights, but kind of did an Adesanya where he waited until he got at a certain level in kickboxing to come over. He's already had one really sick knockout that was like 15 or 20 seconds into the fight, maybe. A couple fights ago, I forget what it is. I want to say it was a standing elbow, but it was just one of those things where it was kind of like Adesanya or Alex Pereira, where you can just tell immediately, like, this dude's way better at kickboxing than the other guy. What makes it tough is that he's coming up against Gregory Rodriguez, who is pretty dangerous himself, pretty well-rounded, probably a better grappler than Njokuani, but also has knockout power of his own. And there's been, other guys that have come into the UFC with a striking background and got hurt on the feet. I remember it happened with Gokhan Saki against Khalil Roundtree. Came in, sick glory kickboxer, maybe towards the end of his career a little too much, but went in and went to check a leg kick and just got cracked really well and got stopped. So it doesn't for sure mean that Njokuani should win. This one's really even on the odds, not just for who's going to win, but for whether it'll go past 1.5. So this is a fight a lot of people do not think is going to be going the distance. I want to lean towards the kickboxer, but I think Rodriguez is going to have a tough game for Chidi Njokuani to deal with. This is one that if you were going to put in the parlay and you don't want to go with Njokuani, maybe taking it not to go the distance. It could be a finish, but I'm not sure that it'll happen in the first round and a half. So you might be better off just putting this on there as not going the distance. That brings us to the main event, and this is another fight that is going to be on our main parlay where we're going to have 3 fights. The first one is that Joe Pyfer to beat Alan Amedovski. In this main event, 135, Corey Sanhagen's coming off the loss to Peter Yan, and Song Yadong is coming off a win off of Marlon Moraes. And it looks like he also beat Kyler Phillips, Casey Kenny, and Julio Arce the year before that. So that is a pretty impressive run. The one thing I will say in that last fight against Marlon Moraes is he's been knocked out a lot recently, and Song kind of got him at the end of that. So I don't count that one for a whole lot. But beating Casey Kenny's pretty impressive. He's a pretty well-rounded southpaw. Him beating Kyler Phillips is pretty impressive. He's a really creative striker, trains with O'Malley. Song Yadong's out of Team Alpha Male, pretty well-rounded, obviously going to have good wrestling coming from that camp. The thing is Corey Sanhagen, I think, is just a little bit better in the stand-up. I don't really know how it would go with the wrestling and like a jiu-jitsu match between these two, but I just think the way Sanhagen moves and his range and stuff, he's going to be able to keep it from getting there too much. And when you got a guy that's famous for flying knees like that, you really got to think before you're shooting in on him. Especially not only that, but the level of competition. Just for example, in his last fight, Song Yadong beats a guy that's been knocked out a handful of times in the last few years, whereas Corey Sanhagen was fighting Peter Yan. I always find that's something nobody ever really mentions coming into a fight that really does make a difference. If you got two guys on losing streaks, but one guy's been, really put through the ringer and having tough fights, and the other guy's just kind of random dudes, that does matter because then when you get in there, there's a good chance, like for Corey, this is either going to seem easy or it's going to seem like, well, this isn't any crazier than Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan and TJ Dillashaw. Whereas Song Yadong is definitely going to get in there and be like, this is not Casey Kenny or Kyler Phillips or Marlon Moraes. So that's something I also think could work against Song Yadong. I also don't think he's done 5 rounds before. And if he has, it's been a while, whereas Corey Sanhagen is coming off 2 straight back-to-back 5-round fights with TJ Dillashaw and Peter Yan. So he should be more ready for that type of pace and stuff. I don't think Song Yadong will gas out or anything. I think he'll be able to do 5, but I just think it's a little bit much. First main event, first 5 rounds, probably the first guy he's fought that's in the top 5, and maybe one of the most dangerous. And so I think Corey Sanhagen gets this done. I will say I wouldn't be shocked if Song stole a round or 2, and I wouldn't be shocked if this went the distance. That's why I'm not taking him by knockout. Song seems pretty durable. So for sure going to put Corey Sanhagen with Joe Pyfer on this. Lewis, I know you didn't get a chance to do a lot of research on these, but do you have any thoughts on Corey Sanhagen versus Song?
No, I don't have no thoughts on it. I do like Song, to be honest, as a fighter. I'm hoping he wins. But like you said, Corey's really good with those flying knees, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't have a prediction for this one. I'm definitely copying you on your parlay.
right on. Yeah.
So, sorry for everyone out there. I apologize every time. I know I don't do no research. I carry on. I'm right there on Travis's back, but I
Hey,
swear one of these days I'll start searching fights again.
Lewis is our tech guy. That's what's important.
Yeah,
No videos without Lou.
you should have seen it earlier. Took a solid 30 minutes to get started. Oh boy.
Um, so before we wrap it up with you guys, we will add our third fight to the parlay, which hopefully, this being a big fight, I notice even the betting sites I use that don't usually have anything for boxing do have this one. And it is the trilogy between Canelo Alvarez and Triple G. Uh, Obviously, I think Canelo was planning on doing this at some point, but because of him losing that fight to Bivol in his quest to get another belt up at 175, I think this has made him kind of want to do this. The thing that makes this one a little bit different is not only the last time they fought was about this time in 2018, so not only has it been 4 years, Canelo, obviously, though he's lost his last fight and Triple G hasn't since then, Canelo's had the way tougher opponents and things have been going way better for him. He got all the belts at 168, became pound for pound, whereas Triple G is kind of taken a little bit of a step down in competition. And I believe, yeah, it looks like he did get a knockout in his last one against Ryoto Murata, but I don't remember it being super impressive. He's definitely looking older. I want to say he's about 40 or so, and especially with the long amateur career he had, it's definitely taken its toll on him. One of the things that makes this one different is that this one is at 168. So this one's at super middleweight, where Canelo took the belts off Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith and those guys, whereas the first 2 times these guys fought, it was at 160. And I think, honestly, that's better for both of them. I think Canelo's gotten too big to where him going down, he's a little small for 175, but I think him going all the way down to middleweight at 160 could be a bit much. And same with Triple G. I remember them saying in that first fight, Canelo started off at 154 and would always kind of bounce around a lot. And so they said his fight against Triple G, I think, was like the 3rd time or the 2nd time he had made 160. For Triple G, it was the 400th time because that was his weight class in the Olympics and all that. So I think both guys are going to be happy to have that extra 8 pounds on them. The other thing that's cool for Triple G is in kind of payback. The first fight obviously was a draw. The second fight, Canelo won, but it was another disputed decision. A lot of people thought Triple G probably took that first fight, and they just gave the draw to Canelo as a favor. Uh, Triple G had all of the belts at 160 when Canelo won them. So not only did he win this big fight against a big name, but then you've got almost all the belts at a weight class, and so you're that close to being undisputed. The cool thing is this time it's going the other way, where Canelo is putting all the belts he took from Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant and those guys, the WBA Super, WBC, IBF, WBO, and the Ring. So the cool thing is Triple G, if he wins, his name's immediately in the history books and shit. So that'll be cool for him. I just think Canelo's on better form. He was able to call the shots on when this happened. It was probably his decision for this fight to take place at 168. I'm looking here, and even Triple G's last couple fights were all again at 160. So this might be the first time that Triple G's ever done 168. I got to think for an older fighter, that's going to help him. I think Canelo's going to look bigger this time than he did any of the other times. If you remember, he failed that drug test and blamed it on the horse meat. He's definitely put on some muscle since then. So
Some good
not sure what
horse
the deal
meat.
with that is. Yeah. The thing I'm thinking is Canelo being heavier now and immediately coming back down to 68. I don't think it's going to drain him, but I think kind of like Bivol, you notice he can only put out so much output. Obviously, Triple G's not exactly Mayweather. He's not a hard guy to hit, but he's a guy you really got to be careful when you're swinging on just because of how hard he hits. And even with an older fighter, that's going to be the last thing to go. Um, I know Canelo wants to go out there, from what I've heard, and get a knockout against his rival. And I think, especially coming off a loss, that would definitely look good. He is a negative 500 favorite, so him and that Pfeiffer guy together, I think, with the Corey Sanhagen, just barely makes this a plus money parlay. I think putting your money on Canelo is pretty safe because even if he goes out there and looks mediocre and gets tired, the judges are probably going to give it to him. So. And if by chance he does come out there and is able to steamroll Triple G and get the knockout, you'll still get the money. If you feel pretty confident that he can't put away Triple G, then maybe pick him to win by points. I think that was like negative 110 or something. Obviously, it'd be a lot of plus money for him to win by knockout just because Triple G's never been stopped or even really looked hurt. This is one of those ones where, I think it could be like the Rumble in the Jungle. I think this could maybe be more exciting because of the place Canelo's coming from, where he needs to kind of get a good win under him, especially if he's going to get the confidence to go and fight Bivol again. And Triple G's got nothing to lose. He kind of got robbed in the first one. Let's say he lost the second one. He's won since, but clearly is kind of just hanging around for this fight. So I see him giving it all he's got, and with him not having to cut the same amount of weight, perhaps it'll make a difference. I believe he's also with a different trainer. He was with Abel Sanchez back then, and I believe he's with somebody else now. So hopefully they'll time it right so that these don't happen at the same time, and anybody that wants can watch both of them. But Canelo's going to be the last guy that we put on our parlay, and on the riskier parlay that we were doing with Chidi and Jaquani and those guys, maybe Pickett to go the distance. Pretty safe bet, I would say. And that's about what I got for you guys on fights.
All right. I like it, Travis. I like it. I'm excited. I'm excited to make money. Hopefully, I'm going to post your results from last week. But tell
Oh
tell
yeah,
them how many of those parlays you got right. What was it, like an 11 pick parlay, 9 pick parlay?
yeah. Technically, I only got 8 right because I made the parlay before they switched those fights,
Mm-hmm.
the Diaz fight and stuff. So it was 8 in a row right, but it ended up being I believe plus 33,900, something like that.
You guys hear
So
that?
yeah,
Thirty-three
that's
thousand nine hundred.
definitely the craziest one that I've had yet. I was one of those ones where I've been kind of messing around and seeing how crazy of parlays they were going to let me do, and that one cent would have been $350, and then by them taking off those 3 fights, the Diaz fight, the Chimaev fight, and the other one, I think it ended up going down to like $4 or something. But wishing I would have put $10 on that, I'd have like 40 grand or something. So
Yep.
definitely going to bet a little bit more. But for you guys out there, that's one of the things I like about WinBet, and that's WYNN, is that they let you make really small parlays so you can kind of get used to it and get a system down before you start betting more. And sometimes, even though those obviously anything that's 33,000 to 1 is a bit of a long shot, but whenever you do a parlay, there's no limit on what you can put on it. So you can just make a shitload and make them crazy enough to where any one of them that hits, you'll have enough to bet for the rest of the month.
Well, you heard it from the man, guys. If you guys do
Yeah,
end up making money off of Travis's parlays, make sure to say something in the next video.
yeah. Give us a shout out at least while you're at the bar.
Yeah. All right. That does it, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, deuces, Travis.